Maritime Technology Cooperation Centers Network, a potential mechanism for institutionalizing sustained capacity building in developing regions, with, of course, the main focal point from the IMO side. He is, of course, my co-MC yesterday, and of course, he's coming up here for the final presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, with all you have, please welcome Dr. Jose Matheickal.
Good morning. I think it's still, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be back in Singapore. I lived here for 6-7 years. It's always a homecoming for me. And it was a great fun working with MPA to jointly organize this conference as well for the last 1 year. It has been quite a journey. With this last presentation, I was trying to put some concepts, some ideas, and potentially one of the solutions into the future that we could think of, and it's going to leave some suggestion, some room for suggestions, opinions in this room, and that's the whole purpose of this presentation. But however, I'll just take you through what has been happening in capacity building area from IMO side as a response. As Mr. Ntuli mentioned in the resolution, there was a call on the Secretariat, what the Secretariat is expected to do. So maybe we can just have a quick look at what has been happening, and maybe the issue of technology transfer in a way versus technology cooperation, subtle differences, and some other existing initiatives around the world. Maybe some good lessons can be learned, and probably a concept to put to you to see if what you think about it. To put in context, this is a response part of IMO, starting. The base was of course the MARPOL Annex 6 Regulation 23, the MEPC resolution on technology transfer and capacity building, and also the ad hoc working group that is operational right now. In response to those call of the Secretariat, we have started a path starting from ITCP, the Technical Cooperation Program of IMO, and also some major projects that we have been doing in the last 3-4 years. But then the question arises, is that enough? And is that same path continues, or should we think of something a bit different into the future? And can this lead to some way of catalyzing institutions in the future to support the sustainable maritime transport system that we all look forward to and hear about all the time? Now, IMO included a major project, a program on integrated technical cooperation program on energy efficiency specifically. And that was starting by creating a new program under the ITCP specifically on ship energy efficiency, and that started in 2012. Basically, it provides funding for various capacity building training activities in the field of energy efficiency, and we have been doing a number of programs there. And from those interventions, we have already developed a number of awareness-raising materials, which is really being useful now. And we have model courses developed. We have training packages on EEDI and SEMP. We had many partners in that WMU, Korean Register, and other partners who helped us in the process. And as Professor Rafael mentioned, we also did the train the trainer workshops in WMU, which has now trained various people from around the world and trying to build that expertise around the world. So those interventions are useful. Then we moved on to some projects, starting with the KOICA, the Korean funded supported project, specifically on East Asia, where we focused on workshops, again building awareness, workshops on energy efficiency and operations and design, and also port sec control officers. So that project really laid the foundation for us, and we learned a lot in terms of what are the tools available, what should be the tools, etc., and that gave us a foundation to build further on. Then came this opportunity, which you all heard, that we launched yesterday, the JEF project. I'm not going to go through that. You heard about it yesterday, and that is an exciting initiative that we are looking forward to with all these 10 countries involved, and that we are hoping that we will further improve the capacity in these countries to go forward. We also have this alliance, industry alliance, that we are trying to bring the industry partners together. We hope we will have more partners soon joining this alliance. So now, these were some of the things that we have done in the last few years. But these short-term, ad hoc interventions, are they enough? Are they sufficient to create a sustainable impact into the future? Question to be asked. That actually then leads to, should we do more or something different? And then also a question arises, the focus. Okay, technology transfer, is that what we want? But we also heard about technology cooperation, and there are subtle differences. The technology transfer itself, yes, it is complex, it is challenging, and that's what we want to achieve. But in many cases, for example, the patents are not owned by governments, they are owned by companies. And the companies, it's not that easy for the companies to surrender their patents for technology cooperation. So in some cases, these patents are more than 100 for a particular technology. I mean, hybrid engines, in some cases, these patents are more than 200, I was told. And licensing all these patents is a challenge itself. Okay, even if that barrier is broken, then somebody has to build the technology, install it in a market where we don't have enough skills. And then the question, okay, are these technologies mature enough to transfer? I mean, we can't transfer anything unless there is a technology. Of course, we have made great progress, but there are some technologies still coming up. So with all these complex criteria, I think we should really start thinking about how do we focus on technology cooperation. And we heard about a lot in the morning in terms of collaboration, cooperation. We heard some models, some bilateral work. And this, I mean, if you think philosophically a little bit different, and technology cooperation, and this is where we can now bring various partners, not just the business-to-business arrangement. Now we have governments coming in. Now we have private sector coming in, and we can connect them together, and we start thinking about cooperation. And probably that's the direction we should take, and with the hope that that leads to a very smooth way of technology transfer happening. Now, we should also look into some other initiatives, and I would like to perhaps start with a little story of myself. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, that what you're looking at is my brain, actually. That was a photograph from last year when the doctors told me I have something bad in my brain, when I started listening to some noise. And that's what was the cluster there that was actually connecting my veins behind my ear, sending blood in the wrong direction. So they said, yeah, there's a big risk. If it continues on, who knows what happens. It was a shock for me, but that was the photograph last month, which said it has been completely cleared. I had the opportunity to be with the best technical or medical facility in the UK, the best trained doctors in the world, a Cambridge-educated doctor, who did that process without a surgical procedure. They didn't have to open my brain. They sent a glue through the artery and came all the way here and closed that link. Now, that needed technology, that needed skills, and that needed equipment, that needed MRIs, that needed CT scans, and everything to do this 6 hours complex process. I asked the question to the doctor after this, what if I were in a different country where these facilities were not available? Expecting that he will tell me, bad luck, then he probably wouldn't have survived. But he said, and he was so excited, said, no, that wouldn't have been the case. And they have established a very beautiful network around the world, and that's where the governments are willing to cooperate in terms of doing the capacity building and skill transfer for some of the medical doctors. There was this entrepreneurial medical providers in some of the countries who are willing to invest in equipment infrastructure, provided their doctors will get trained. They didn't have to do it in the whole countries. Then they set up regional centers where they brought the patients. Doctors went from here, trained the doctors there. Now they are actually reaching out and these issues. And this is a 1 in a million. And I was so fortunate to be 1 in a million to get that. Now, and that's a very inspiring and motivational story where the governments came together to initially capacitate the people. The private sector in those countries came in to build some investment in capital in terms of the technologies. A beautiful as a medical field. Now, I can't say that everybody will have the same motivation like saving lives when it comes to commercial areas. in any of the industry sectors. But the thing that might connect us is the issue that we're all facing of the health of the environment, and of course leading into the Paris. And I think maybe that's the area where we have this convergence of this commercial interest and also our common interest of saving our Earth. And that's where these network ideas are going to work, because that's going to converge, because we have this common motivation. And we are not the only one who is looking into it, because this network concept has been looked into by many of the UN organizations, especially on energy efficiency areas, and starting with the UNIDO's International Technology Centers on technology transfer programs, and they have many centers around the world. Investment Technology Promotion Offices, again by UNIDO. We have the Network Resource Efficient and Cleaner Production Centers, South-South Cooperation Centers, the Green Industry Platform, you name it. There are so many networks which are really doing good jobs. But when you look at it, they're all land-based industries and industries not connected to maritime, actually. Now, we could also look into the relatively new initiatives under the UNEP, which is the UNEP CTCN centers that is actually created very recently under the UNFCCC, where countries, they have centers or networks created to address climate change technologies and technology transfer program. Again, if you look into the applications so far from each country that is trying to get the help, there are any area where maritime is involved. Of course, maritime is such a different area, such a totally different parameters. The brand new one is from the World Bank, the Climate Innovation Centers that they are promoting, they are establishing in various countries. And these centers basically look into the innovation on the ground and also the financing aspects to send this innovators and not to go to the value of the typical value of debt in the innovation process where you don't have cash flow. And these centers are actually trying the finance aspect as well, in addition to other help. Now, again, this is on renewable energies and other aspects, nothing into maritime. Now, that clearly, actually, if you analyze these existing initiatives, while we know these networks are going to work, there isn't any of that scale in the maritime side. And that's where this vacuum there, and that's where we have to start thinking, should we do something in the maritime similarly, learning from those experiences. Now, and that's where this concept I'm putting to you, ladies and gentlemen, a network that we couldn't think of, and network something called Maritime Technology Cooperation Centers, maybe a 4 or 5 around the world with some specific functions to play. Of course, the capacity building could be one of that centers. Technology needs and market barrier analysis could be one of the functions. Of course, they could then facilitate the network around the world. They can also facilitate data collection, which we are talking about, from efficient fuel use or fuel efficiency, or even technology demonstration projects. They can get their hands dirty working on projects and gathering experiences like what we heard from Singapore, how they are doing it here in NTU. Also, the center, the experts, once we develop them, we can have, they can then probably assist the government in the policy and institutional strengthening process as well. And perhaps they can also, along the way, bring us to access to the market, to the finance and financing technology transfer. Now, being a regional center and being connected in many ways, that we could probably think of 5 of the centers around the world serving the 5 different regions around the world, provided we chose it correctly, and they can be then connected. Of course, the national government would have to involve. A host institution has to be identified. We are not talking about buildings and bricks and mortars. We are talking about identifying existing institution, then we can add something onto it to act as a center. Of course, it has to have a regional reach, and it has to have a regional dimension to it, and there has to be some coordination from some other level. And if IMO is asked to do that, I'm sure we would be able to find that way of coordinating that from IMO. And such, if you were to go in the direction, and if you were to propose a project, it probably would have something components like that. Maybe we could have a 2-3 year project if some donors are interested. And I know that from Ericsson, we heard that funding bodies like EU is looking into supporting such ideas. And perhaps we could come up with some components of a project where we have a capacity building component where the sender and there are some staff train and they can train others. We could have a pilot projects on technology demonstrations, and it could vary from anything from assessment to demonstration itself. We could have pilot project on data collection. We could also then encourage them to have communication within the region outreach. So these could be the components of such a pilot scale program, and all these players that typically we can anticipate can all be involved in creating and in participating in those tenders in those different regions. Now, and that was my proposal, and in summary, yes, regulations are key drivers for us to move forward. We need to slightly look at a different perspective from what technology cooperation within the framework of technology transfer. And really, the government-private sector partnership is the key for the obvious reasons. We have to have the private sector engaged. Now, this global network of maritime technology cooperation centers, I'm sure it has a lot to think about. We have seen other examples and beautiful examples from the medical side as well as from other areas as well, which is working. And maybe in maritime, that could be an answer. And with that, I think I will leave with a slide here with a dolphin in front of the ship that basically summarizes, yes, if we are all working together, if we are cleverly using resources, we can achieve what we want to achieve and towards the technology transfer. Thank you very much.